When she walked onto the tarmac that morning, no one knew who she was. The air was cold, the sky sharp and pale, and the distant sound of engines echoed like thunder rolling over steel. Military bases had their own rhythm. Crisp salutes, clipped orders, the hum of readiness that never truly stopped. But when the young woman stepped past the guard post with quiet confidence and a duffel over her shoulder, the rhythm faltered just for a moment. There was something about the way she moved. Calm, sure, like someone who had been here before and yet didn't belong anymore. The guards checked her ID and frowned. The clearance was real, but it was old. Too old. Within minutes, the message reached the Admiral's office, an unauthorized visitor with outdated credentials. They told him it was probably a mistake. Maybe a former technician or logistics officer who hadn't updated her pass. The Admiral sighed, annoyed by the disruption, and ordered her escorted off base immediately. But before that order reached the gate, something changed. The woman had stopped near Hangar 9, the old fighter bay now used for SEAL deployment prep. A group of operators in dark fatigues were loading gear into a transport truck, laughing in the morning chill. When she walked past, one of them caught sight of the small patch on her sleeve. Faded, nearly colorless but still recognizable. It bore a single word written in ghost gray thread, Raven. And that's when the laughter stopped. Every SEAL in that group fell silent. Not because they recognized her face, but because they recognized the name, Raven. The call sign whispered in old debriefings and mission archives, spoken by pilots with the kind of respect reserved for legends. The name belonged to a woman who had once flown an F-22 into a mission no one was supposed to survive, and brought everyone home except herself. At least that's what the files had said. The Admiral arrived minutes later, irritation still on his face as he stepped out of the jeep. But when his eyes landed on her, the color drained from his expression. For a long moment he didn't speak, because standing in front of him wasn't a stranger. It was the ghost of a story the Air Force still told. The pilot who'd disappeared after her last mission, presumed dead after saving an entire unit of SEALs stranded behind enemy lines. She was supposed to be gone. Now she stood there, alive, quiet and looking at the base as if she was walking through the past. The Admiral dismissed the guards with a small gesture. He didn't ask how she had survived. He didn't ask where she'd been all these years. He just looked at her, at the faint scar near her jaw, at the faded wings on her jacket, and knew that whatever she had been through, it hadn't been easy. Over the next few days, the story began to unfold piece by piece. Years ago, during a classified operation, her jet had been hit. The mission was chaos, the radio calls desperate. Everyone believed she went down in flames, but she had ejected deep in hostile terrain, surviving weeks alone with no signal, moving only at night until extraction finally came. When she returned, her body was alive, but something inside her wasn't. The military called it recovery. She called it silence, so she vanished, leaving the skies behind. But now she was back. Not to fly, not to fight, but to deliver a letter. It was from one of the SEALs she had saved, now long gone, who had written her name before he died. He'd told her that she had given them life, and he wanted her to know that his family had lived every day in gratitude for what she'd done. She didn't want a medal. She didn't want recognition. She just wanted to return what he'd written, his words, his gratitude, to the men still serving beside him. That was all. When the Admiral finally understood, he asked if she'd like to stay for the ceremony they were holding that evening. She hesitated, but stayed. As the flag rose at sunset, the air heavy with memory and the sound of boots striking pavement, the SEALs stood in line. One by one, they turned toward her and saluted. Not because of rank, not because of protocol, but because of who she was. And as the wind caught her hair, the Admiral whispered to one of his aides, "That's Raven." The name spread down the line, soft but electric, until every SEAL in formation stood still. The kind of silence that isn't empty but sacred. The kind of silence that belongs to legends. That night, she sat alone by the airstrip, watching a pair of jets cut across the dusk. Their afterburners trailed light against the darkening sky. For the first time in years, she felt peace. She realized she hadn't come back to the base to say goodbye. She had come back to remember that her story hadn't ended in that explosion years ago. It had only changed form. Some heroes live in the air. Others learn to walk on the ground again, carrying the sky inside them. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that courage doesn't fade, it only changes shape, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Legends of History. Every story you support helps us keep alive the memories of those who gave everything, and those who still carry the weight of the sky. Special request, tell us in the comments, what does true courage mean to you?